Hi, everyone. We are the last panel today, so I'm going to make sure that you are entertained but also informed. So get ready for excitement, but really fascinating discussions. So our topic today is digital connection, technology, work, and skills. The digital economy has transformed the way we work and the way we live, and it's been touted to be significant for changing the lives of refugees, not just for education, but also for employment. And on the panel today, we'll talk about both skilling and jobs. So first of all, just to introduce myself, my name is Lorraine Chams, and I'm the founder of an organization called NAML, but I'm also research associate at the Centre for Business Research here at Cambridge University. And my research is on education, employment, and just taking what Maha said earlier about how sometimes research can be extractive. This is why I founded NAML, so that I wouldn't just be doing research, I'll be actually doing something to change the lives of refugees. So NAML trains refugees with the skills to work remotely and links them to digital work. So our first speaker, Daniel, is his camera on? Yes. Daniel is one of our alumni. He's a South Sudanese refugee living in Nairobi. I met Daniel for the first time in person, even though I've met him online several times, in Nairobi in October when I was hosting a workshop. And I was super impressed by him. But more significantly, I was so touched by how his life has changed by being able to work. So Daniel, over to you. I think you're on mute. If you can unmute and begin. There we go.
Hello, am I audible enough?
Perfect.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here, and it's very nice seeing familiar faces. Marie, good to see you. Yeah, it's an honor to be here today, and it's an honor to be in a panel with these amazing change makers, Marie, Amy, and Sofiane, Lorraine as well. I've interacted with a lot of you guys, and first of all, Ukech Daniel Uboa. You can call me Daniel. The other names are very hard to pronounce. As you can see, I'm dressed for the occasion, but at least from the waist up. But don't worry, I won't stand up. So thank you for having me, and I won't bore you with all of the beginning of my journey, like from a toddler up to now. But I will give you specific instances or specific events that changed my life in terms of academics and also trying to gain employment. As Lorraine has introduced me, I'm a refugee from South Sudan. I was brought here by my mother during the civil war in South Sudan, formerly Sudan, before the separation, when I was 2 months old. So I grew up in Kenya, specifically Kakuma refugee camp, completed all my education there until Form 4. And that is where I started. Actually, when I was in primary school, the last year of primary school, I came to realize that that may potentially be the end of my education, because my father then was not able to pay for my high school education, and so and the high school in Kakuma refugee camp were not allowing admissions for South Sudanese students because of the forced repatriation back then. And so I told myself, well, if this is the end, might as well end on a high note. And so I worked hard, performed very well. Fortunately, the admission of South Sudanese students who are in Kakuma Refugee Secondary School was reopened. And I went back to Kakuma, registered for secondary school, and then completed my high school there. And with all the limited resources, I worked really hard and got a chance to position myself to be able to at least get scholarships to pursue higher education. And so I started applying for scholarships immediately after my high school. And the first year I applied but wasn't successful. The second year I wasn't successful. It's the third year that I was offered a scholarship to study IT here in Nairobi by a scholarship called DAFI. DAFI is a German government-sponsored scholarship. And so I moved to Nairobi, completed my undergraduate, and in 2023, I graduated with a bachelor's in IT. And so I had a decision then to either go back to Kakuma or remain in Nairobi and explore other opportunities. And so I decided to stay in Nairobi and explore the opportunities that are available at my disposal then. And so as a naive young graduate, I knew I had everything to conquer the world. And so I started applying for jobs, and I was rejected like almost every time I applied for any position that I got. And then reality hit. It turns out, with all the skills that I had, it wasn't enough for me to gain employment. And so I took a step back, went to the drawing board, and started looking for ways to position myself in a way that I open up myself to more opportunities. And that's when a friend of mine sent me a link to apply for a training program by NAMAL, the workforce readiness for the digital economy. And so I didn't know what to make of it at first, but I was free and I had nothing to do, and so I said, might as well just apply. And I applied. I didn't know what to expect from the training, but after a couple of months, I started to realize that the skills and the connections that I made through the whole training program were very, very important in positioning myself to be able to gain employment. And until then, NAMAL opened me up to a lot of opportunities in terms of connecting with industry specialists, connecting with other people, and meeting amazing people like Lorraine, Marie, and other people that might not be here now. And with that knowledge, I came to understand how remote work can help displaced communities towards a sustainable future. And it changed my life in ways that I couldn't have imagined possible. And right now, I work as a freelance web developer and also as an AI trainer with Pareto AI. So as a freelance web developer, what I do is I develop websites and softwares for clients, either globally or even locally. But most of my clients are locally based because I get them through referrals from friends and also through other means like LinkedIn. And as an AI trainer, what I do is I am part of a team that is tasked with training various AI models to give it a human touch. And I've been doing that since the end of last year, and up to now, I'm still participating in that. And so I think that is the introduction of what I do and my journey through my academic journey through the whole process from coming to Kenya until where I am right now.
Thank you, Daniel. Really inspirational. We're very proud of you. I want to turn it over to Amy Fallon from UNHCR Innovation, who will talk about UNHCR's work because it's very much connected to what we do, those of us that work on the digital economy for refugees. And Amy, as well as being a dear friend, we have this collaboration, all of us with UNHCR, to really do the best we can to support people like Daniel. Amy, over to you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Hi, everyone. Really nice to be here. So I work in UNHCR's Innovation Service. Don't think I need to explain to this room what UNHCR does, but the Innovation Service in particular is to basically create an enabling environment for innovation across the organization. So we do this through a number of different mechanisms, technical support, research, but primarily our innovation funds, which support both UNHCR teams and refugee-led organizations to pilot and scale new ideas that they might not find support for through mainstream funding mechanisms. So since we kind of started these in 2022, we've supported over 120 different solutions, and these are mainly from refugee-led organizations. And many of these have been absorbed into mainstream UNHCR programming. So one example, for instance, is the use of WhatsApp chatbots in communicating with community strategies. So this is something that started as a pilot, then was scaled up to mainstream programming and was used in the Sudan response as well as many others. So each year we have open calls for these funds, and a few years back we started noticing that we got more and more funding applications focused on the digital economy and digital skilling from both our colleagues and from the refugee organizations that we work with. And so through this, we started to fund some initial pilots. These include coding school in Rwanda, kind of policy research on digital livelihoods in the Middle East. But then we embarked on 2-year project with the International Labour Organization in East Africa and the Middle East, which massively scaled up our work. Me into the team and be in contact with Lorraine and many others on this panel. And this was a landmark project, I guess, because it put digital livelihoods on the map within UNHCR. And it allowed us to gather insights from refugee communities, many of whom have been working in the digital economy for years and years without the support or intervention with UNHCR. It allowed us to test new approaches to trying to build clearer, more inclusive pathways to digital work. These included launching a refugee-focused employment platform in Ethiopia, digital skills pilots in Lebanon, female-focused co-working spaces in Egypt, and lots more. And we also started to teach our own colleagues about some of the protection risks when talking about digital economy and digital work. We are obviously a protection agency. And then engaging with some of the policy aspects, whether that's digital identification, access to bank accounts, or access to connectivity. So partnering with some of the connectivity heavyweights, GSMA, ITU, to try and sort the major connectivity barriers refugees face. So that's the last couple of years. And where we stand right now, I would say, I think what we learned is that in each context that we worked in, there are several key enabling factors which you need to have lined up in order for any modicum of success. You need an enabling legal and regulatory environment. You need a strong digital skill building infrastructure. You need access to physical infrastructure and connectivity, and you need clear pathways to digital employment opportunities. And currently in the humanitarian development sector, we see a lot of programs which focus on only kind of one or two of these elements and then fail at the cost of another. So you have a digital skills program with no kind of job linkage support afterwards. You build a digital hub for co-working or freelance work, but offer no kind of market-driven skills training. So I think our goal right now is to try and take these ecosystems, take the context that we work in, and figure out what's working, scale what's working, fill gaps where there are gaps. Not just looking at skilling refugees for talent supply, but also looking to engage the private sector to enhance demand, because this is a market system after all. And yeah, this is definitely not a one organization job, and this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Thanks, Amy, and we'll come back to you in a bit. And I'm glad you spoke about this sort of the holistic view of all the enabling conditions that are needed for refugees to find work. So next we have Sofiane. Sofiane's the founder of Chams, and Sofiane and I, we've got history because Chams was the first organization that NAML worked with in Jordan back in 2020. in the midst of COVID, because I started writing about digital remote work for refugees before COVID, and no one believed it was possible. It took COVID to, for us, for Sofiane and I to come together and to do a project. That was Namal's very first project. And Sofiane has done a lot of work in Jordan, building coding schools in boot camps. Sofiane built his coding school in Zaatari, and he's done recently a much larger project now in Jordan. So Sofiane, I'd love to hear about your work in Jordan, and especially how things have evolved since you started, and also looking at the tensions between the local and the global, because you not only build the coding school, but you look at what happens beyond the coding school, the jobs, creating a holistic view. So over to you, Sofiane.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here today, and try to be between the humanitarian and education. I'm totally not on the same sector historically. I came from the entrepreneurship and tech sector mainly, and as all the tech sector, generally when we have a problem, we try to go to a very simple pattern called problem-solving methodology, and also we impose in ourselves a scaling mechanism. And when I went the first time to Zaatari in 2017 and observed the community there, I rapidly, after some interview, understood that there is a very high level talent located in this area. I also discovered that a lot of these talent have good degrees. Low degrees, civil engineering, and rapidly working with UNHCR in Jordan, I discovered the data also of 25% of the Jordanian cannot fit with the right job, and also what I heard this morning, 1% of the refugees don't have higher education. Then rapidly we built a little non-profit organization, a small one, well, based in France, but now it's moved to Jordan, but historically we made the operation in France. And we try experimentation, like a prototyping or a first coding bootcamp, mainly in nearby Zaatari, and we learned. We made some failure and fail fast, and then we learned in the curve that English as a language is complex in this community, and then we added soft skills through some partnership with Namal. But for us, from the beginning, education in digital skills was not for the sake of education, but for the sake of employment. That's the main, I think, target from the beginning, is to say that we need to have coders. What we call now coders is developers. Why? Because there is more than 2 million coders missing in the world in terms of employment. And for us, it was just a normal problem-solving situation. And the idea was not to begin with basic or medium digital skills, but advanced one, which put the target in different kind of level. Then we made 6 cohorts for 4 years. We observed rapidly that Jordanian, because we were in a political situation where we needed to mix it between Jordanian and Syrian and Iraqi, etc. And then we observed that Jordanian, we have a rate of 80% of employment after the bootcamp. And for the refugee was much more complex. First of all, because in Jordan, you don't have the right to work in digital skills, even when you have your certification or diploma. Then we searched what could be the right value proposition for the refugees. And after 2 years of working about branding, perspective, and certification, we worked with local partner, Hussein Technical University, and the Crown Prince Foundation to build up a proper coding school in Amman. Sorry. Why? Because the branding situation of the certificate is one of the main target in the employment. Sorry. And then we initiated a school called 42 School. It's an international school. There is more than 53 campuses around the world. The idea was that if you are a Syrian refugee or Iraqi refugee and you have this certification, you know that you have more than 33 countries around the world that know the brand and then can employ you locally, remotely, and perhaps with the complementary pathways with UNHCR. The idea was to augment or amplify the capability of employment for refugees because of this new brand. And the first cohort we launched last year is about mixed between Jordanian and Syrian and Iraqi, was about 160 students, which is quite a big cohort, an important cohort in Jordan. And now we handed over the program to the Crown Prince Foundation locally, because I ultimately believe that when country believe that is good for themselves, they don't need us in a certain way. We're just now advising the employment part, international employment part. But that's the story. The story was evolving from some failure, fast failure, and adapting rapidly to the current market and the current demand.
Thanks, Sofiane. Fail fast and innovate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next speaker, Mahri is a professor at University of Leicester and a researcher at University of Oxford. And Mahri, again, I think we all have connections to NAML. I was quite biased in who I chose the panel. Mahri and NAML and our research Maria and shooting her hair, we're doing research on gender and digital economy. So I met Mahri when she was doing the same research. We spoke this and we thought, oh, we're doing the same thing. Let's collaborate. So Mahri's done lots of research focusing on Kenya and digital livelihoods. And again, where Daniel is from, she met Daniel a few months ago in person. So Mahri, please just talk about the broader challenges around the refugee context in Kenya, the challenges more broadly, and sort of what strategies refugees are adopting these challenges.
Thank you very much. So I'm coming more from like a critical perspective towards this discussion about digital livelihood for refugees. So as you've heard, it has become the new mantra, right, in the refugee space, and there are different reasons for that. So I think we will come back to it with Amy later. But obviously there is this donor fatigue, right, in the field of the refugee space, but also that there is a crisis in terms of the durable solutions for refugees, right? So when we talk about durable solutions for refugees, we refer to resettlement, local integration, and return. And the digital has become somehow a new way to rethink about those durable solutions. So in the case of Kenya, the digital has become a way to rethink about local integration, right? So in my own research, I'm looking at what digital livelihood means for refugees themselves, also looking at the trajectories of refugees. So I think it was really good that Daniel started with how he kind of moved into the digital space. So in my research, I'm looking at those trajectories. So how is it that refugees in the context of Kenya, and especially in the context of Nairobi, have been moving from the informal urban space to the informal digital space. And one of the things that I think it's important to mention is that it's concerning a lot of youth, a lot of young refugees. And in the context of Kenya, a lot of them have education, right? So either it's referred as the 1.5 generation or the second generation. So they've been educated either in the camps or in the back home or in Kenya itself. So they have the skills and they don't want to be discriminated against in the local market. They don't want to be exploited anymore, and also they don't want to be doing the same jobs as the parents were doing. So it's one of the reasons why they move into the digital economy, which I think it's important to think of. Sometimes it's not so much like a positive choice, let's say. It can also be like not a negative choice, but it's more like a choice by default because there are not opportunities at the local level. And in the context of Kenya, I think it's also important to think about the fact that Kenya, I think lead regionally in terms of the digital infrastructure. So there are also more opportunities in the context of Kenya because of Kenya. And in the trajectories of refugees that I've been talking to, COVID-19, though we don't really talk too much about COVID-19, was a trigger. So at that time, when it happened, a lot of refugees did lose their job, and then the digital space become really like the time where they thought it was possible to actually make a living. But obviously, there are still challenges, right? So it's not like if it's full of opportunities, but there are still a lot of challenges. And one of the main challenges, and I think Daniel, you will talk more about that, it's the documentation challenges, right? So a lot of those digital platforms do not recognize refugee ID cards, and which creates a challenge for refugees themselves to open an account, right? So if you want to go into those digital labor platforms, you need to register with your ID card. If you have an ID card, you might not be recognized, and therefore you have to find some solution. And it's the same in terms of receiving payment, right? So if you want to be paid, you need a bank account usually, and that's also an issue because the majority of refugees don't have bank accounts. So so there are lots of challenges that refugees are still facing in the digital space. Another thing that I thought I would mention is the lack of social mobility in a way within those platforms. So it's very hard for refugees to, it's actually easy to go into those platforms, but it's very hard to move and to get more jobs and to get opportunities. So they are often very stuck in the basic job that they can do. And we talk about the skills. It's also very hard for them. So with these discussions about the hard skills and the soft skills, and it's also quite hard for refugees to actually gain those skills, but also to apply those skills into those digital labor platforms. And so in the research that I'm doing, I'm looking at solutions that refugees are finding in order to overcome those challenges. So we talk about bottom-up solutions and top-down solutions. So I think as we have UNHCR and Amy here, she might talk a little bit more about those top-down solutions. But in my work, I'm looking at how refugees themselves are trying to overcome those challenges. So I'm looking at refugees that are sometimes trying to create collectives. So they are putting themselves together either in camps. So we have examples in Dadaab, for instance, where you have a freelance company. And for some reason, some of them have managed with the help of Kenyans often to open a company. And then through that company, they will be able to hire refugees. So at the time where I was doing the research, we looked at one company in particular that had 50 refugees that were working specifically for that company. So I'm also looking at refugee-led organizations. So in the space of Kenya, there are lots of them, and they are also trying to provide some support for refugees. So I've been looking at one that is called a Youth Voices Community in the context of Nairobi. They have a program that is called DigiKasi, which it's in Swahili and it means digital livelihood. And they are really trying to go into those neighborhoods, not in the center of Nairobi, trying to reach out to communities and provide some digital skills training for refugees, but also creating what they call digital hub. So it's very hard for refugees to go into the city center. There is a lot of traffic, it costs a lot of money. So they create this kind of digital hubs into their own communities to create the space and create the flexibility for refugees to get access to the remote platform. And then perhaps just to conclude, there is also conversations about the role of refugee-led organization at the national level. So you have like organizations such as Fallon, which is like a network of refugee-led organizations that are really trying to be part of that conversation and be part of this digital ecosystem.
Thanks, Marie. I am going to open the floor to questions, but so we've spoken all about the jobs and access to jobs. Jonathan is going to talk about more about the skilling and specifically mentoring. And I'm really happy that Jonathan's on this panel because mentoring is a core component of NAMO's program. And we've heard stories of how our refugees' lives have been transformed by having mentors. We've had stories of refugees applying for companies 3 times not even being interviewed, being rejected, and getting a mentor through the NAMA program, applying for the same company and getting the opportunity. So mentoring is hugely important, and it's something we really believe in strongly. So I'm really excited to have Jonathan talk about an academic program where Afghan women were mentored. And yeah, go over to you, Jonathan.
Okay, so yeah, I've been working with the Centre for the Study of Global Human Movements, specifically with the Afghan desk, to develop what started as an English for academic purposes program online. Our first cohort was in response to the Ukraine crisis. So our first group of students were from the Ukraine. From Ukraine. They tell me off for saying the Ukraine. I don't know why I keep saying it. Then we moved over to the Afghan situation. And it's kind of an interesting context because the students on the program, some of them are displaced outside of Afghanistan, some of them are displaced within Afghanistan, and some of them aren't displaced at all. But they found that since the Taliban returned to power, that their lives have significantly changed and their access to opportunity has been markedly diminished in Afghanistan. So it's a complex group of students that share the fact that they're all Afghan women. They share like experience of what that means for them under a Taliban regime, but they all have very unique situations. They have individual challenges for learning. And I think that's where the power of mentoring comes in. In the classes that we run online, we could have up to 30 students attend each class, which is a large group for online learning. And they typically don't switch their cameras on for the online classes. So they like to have the instructor have the camera on. So when I'm teaching or when one of our other teachers are teaching, we have our camera on. But there are students I just don't know what they look like. However, I think a majority of the mentors report that, so this is male and female, report that the women do turn their cameras on for the one-to-one sessions. And so I think that's really important for fostering the one-to-one personal connection that's built with the mentors. And it just helps build that relationship and connection to the program. So they aren't just an anonymous space that doesn't speak or only communicates through the chat box. The mentoring also provides a lot of flexibility. So some of the women who are part of the program, they don't have reliable access to a device to connect to the internet. Some of them do. Some of them are from quite wealthy backgrounds, so they have their own computers, but there are a significant number who we have to support with an internet stipend so they can regularly pay to connect to the internet. And also they live in homes where they maybe have to share a mobile phone with 5 other family members. They have to wait for their time to connect. So having the mentoring gives them a bit of flexibility about how to connect. And if they have to have a different time every week, we do explain to the mentors in the mentor training that they require a lot of flexibility, and having just one person to negotiate rather than 30 makes it a lot easier to facilitate those connections and make sure that they don't miss out on learning. So although the course initially began with a focus on facilitating access to online higher education, as the situation in Afghanistan, this situation that's been referred to as gender apartheid, continues to develop and become more protracted. This purposes of the program are shifting in response to the needs of the students. Many of them are in a situation where they have to work, especially those who have been internally displaced. They're often, if they're internally displaced, the reason is usually because they're trying to be forced into marriage. So they've had to leave to escape whoever it is that's pursuing them. And they find themselves in a new part of Afghanistan, sometimes in a safe house. They need to be able to sustain themselves. So we have also introduced some small group mentoring and small courses aimed at employment. So we've been piloting a course in tailoring. So this is quite an interesting way to combine the online teaching with some work they could do within their communities. So the online and offline elements. And also we have some courses coming up in design. So they're learning about design principles with a view to being able to apply those to work online. So in the design of this design program, I think one of the problems with the higher education programs, particularly online ones, is that they're designed with a view to providing the education, but not linked to an employment opportunity afterwards. So whenever we're doing these kind of small mentoring groups with a view to the students being employed, we're making sure there will be an opportunity at the end of the program. So I've probably talked long enough.
No, that was great, Jonathan. We need to talk about digital jobs for your Afghan women as well. So really interesting. I think I'm going to ask one question to each person, and then I will open up to the floor, because I want one question to Daniel. And Daniel, I keep saying I'm proud of you. I'm very proud of you. I would just love to hear, just so the audience can really understand, how has digital work changed your life? I know when I met you, I was impressed, astounded by how, but I want them to hear from you how your life has changed since you started working online.
Oh yeah, thank you so much, Lorraine. Digital work has opened several important opportunities for me and also other displaced or marginalized communities as well. And my friends who are in the same training program. Number one, it has opened me it has given me access to a global market and income as well. And in a sense that it has allowed me to reach clients and employers beyond my immediate surroundings. And even when I couldn't find work locally due to the legal barriers or discrimination, I could still earn an income online. And it has, and I'm able to support myself financially to be able to live in Nairobi, because without that, I would have moved back to Kakuma refugee camp and probably limit my my reach to other opportunities. And number two, it has provided me with a lot of flexibility and mobility as well. As one of the biggest advantages of working online is flexibility. In a sense that I can work from wherever I am and in a time that suits me. And that's especially important when you're dealing with uncertain living situations, like in the case of refugees fleeing from one place to another. You don't know when you will be resettled to a different location. And so working online gives you freedom to be flexible and even be mobile while still engaging in whatever activity that you might be dealing with. And so number three, it has given me an opportunity to keep on learning. Digital work has really pushed me to learn new skills, and it has contributed to my professional growth as well. And since I started doing it last year up to now, I've met a lot of people. And as a person who is in the tech industry, I know how dynamic it is, such that if you stop learning from now up until like 1 year later, you might end up being left behind. And so I'm gradually learning, and it has contributed a lot in my professional growth. And many platforms offer free courses or trainings, and even at a low cost sometimes. And over time, those skills have helped me in earning more from my work. And it has also opened me up to being an entrepreneur. When immediately after I graduated, I only knew that the only way I could support myself is to gain employment, and so I had to apply for jobs and go for interviews and being offered roles in companies or institutions or maybe NGOs. But digital work didn't just gave me a sense that I didn't have to wait for someone to hire me. I created my own small digital business, and as a freelancer, I'm offering my services to people, and this has enabled me to be able to take ownership of my income and the trajectory of my growth, and also the feeling of being included as well. Being part of the digital economy made me feel like I had a place in the world again. It gave me purpose, confidence, and it also gave me a way to contribute in my own terms. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something, and it has given me a clear direction to what I'm working towards. And last but not least, it gave me an opportunity to bypass these legal restrictions and discriminations as well. As online, people judge me for the quality of my work, not just my legal status or where I come from. And that helped me to overcome some barriers I faced in traditional job markets. And still, I've learned that these opportunities only work when digital systems are built to include and respect people like me, not just users. Fair pay, proper support, and community-driven designs are all essential if digital work is going to be truly transformative.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Daniel. I love the fact that when you saying that with online work, you're judged for your skills, not your refugee status or where you're from. Very powerful. I want to go to Amy now. And Amy, you've heard from the refugees. I mean, I know you're very close to the communities, having lived in Nairobi for a number of years. And we spoke about localization. And I'd love to understand what UNHCR is doing to involve local communities, refugees like Daniel, in the work that you're doing. How are you sort of embracing localization as UNHCR innovation?
Yeah, I mean, the concept of localization and accountability to affected populations, if you want the jargon term, has obviously been part of UNHCR's commitments for years and years. But I do think in the last few years, especially in the digital space, we're really trying to push this a bit further. So a good example from the Innovation Service is our Refugee-led Innovation Fund, which is the first UN funding mechanism to provide flexible, tailored support directly to refugee-led organizations to develop solutions that they believe in. Now, it is obviously a problem in itself that prior to this fund, it was very difficult for UNHCR to transfer large sums of money directly to refugee-led organizations. But I do think that, the mammoth amount of support and enthusiasm that this funding mechanism has garnered for people working inside the UN and outside really speaks to kind of a bit of a shift in how we're looking at protection responses and trying to make sure that refugee-led efforts can be at the center, not just in a tokenistic way, but literally with channeling money directly to them where possible. And I think, that really is because localization or local ownership, I think, prefer to call it, isn't just kind of a nice ideal or like a DEI spin-off. It's actually one of the most effective mechanisms that we have at the moment to ensure that the projects we implement are effective and, more importantly, I guess, sustainable. Now, I think there's still a long way to go to institutionalize the concept of local ownership in our work. And there are also some elements where centralized decision-making is going to need to stay relevant, especially when you talk about kind of regional policy or even private sector engagement as it's become increasingly important amidst funding cuts. But I do think that definitely in the innovation service, we're trying to look at ourselves as a way to enable refugee-led solutions. And our work in digital economy, one way we're doing that is, Marie talked about this too, supporting refugee-led freelance collectives. We're also looking to support organizations who are currently doing digital training to provide them with technical support, but then also offering that seed funding element so that it's not just, providing endless amounts of training and then these organizations have no resources to actually implement these the lessons that they've learned. It's then accompanying that with funding so they can kind of grow by themselves. It's difficult because we don't want to shift full burden protection and development to refugee organizations. That's also not fair. There's a balance to be struck. But I think for us, really trying to mainstream this link between technical support and direct funding is the kind of formula that we're seeing work right now.
Thanks, really interesting. And I'd like to move to you, Sofiane. How are you including the local communities in the work that you do? I know you spoke about how you handed over the coding school at Ammar to the Jordan government, but how are the communities, the refugees themselves, engaged in this work that you were doing?
Yeah, well, the process of what we call localization for us, if I understood well, is you have two levels. I think the first level, which is the hard skills part, it's really something that is quite global today. We cannot localize it because in the IT sector and the coding sector, when you learn Python or JavaScript or whatever, everything is mainly in English, let's say. Even the French have to read English. Then it's the hard skill part is it's difficult to localize it. What we believe that could be localized is by design in coding, schools, employment, you have to include by design a triangle between local authority, for us was a local university, and local funders that have also their dynamics about refugees, underserved communities, and local regarding the employability factor, because we know that a lot of countries don't want to compete with their own local forces when they have refugees. Then the idea was by design to implement this triangle in the coding school, that the community represented by refugees was part of all the meeting. And fortunately, we succeeded to make a good ratio of on the first cohort, even if myself is not very satisfied because I wanted to have 50% refugees, 50% Jordanian. It was less in refugee, but let's say the concept for us of localization is really embedding the techniques of codings and taking into account local forces, local headcount, some local politics. No refugees could work in advanced digital scale, not only in basic or medium, mean that could be recruited locally by local companies or remotely, or even moved in other country if they are allowed to.
Yeah, thank you. We'll come back to this, but I want to go to Marie now to talk about the role of women in so many of the programs, funding applications that we see. Donors say we want 70% women, but we know women are really significantly underrepresented in the tech sector, even in our countries, even in the UK and in the US. Women are significantly underrepresented in a lot of programs that we see. It's very difficult to get even 50% women participation, but a lot of donors are saying we want 70% participation of women. Huge challenge. So right now, Namal and with Marie, we're conducting research on the gender dynamics. So can you speak a bit about the specific challenges that women face? And just talk about the findings so far. What are women saying and how are they overcoming these perceived challenges?
So I'm still going to talk about the case of Kenya, right? And so we've been doing some research, and I would say like we could say that we conducted this survey, and we just closed the survey, and we looked at Kakuma and Nairobi, and so we don't really have the analysis yet for the survey, but before that we conducted quite a lot of qualitative interviews, so focus groups and interviews with refugee women, both Kakuma and Nairobi. And we have identified, let's say, four different types of barriers or gender biases that refugee women are facing. So the first one is a gender bias in terms of access to education. And refugee women in camps like Kakuma and Dadaab face significant educational disadvantage compared to both the male counterparts and host communities in urban areas. So I think I'm not going to, say anything new by saying that it's that the number of refugee women who have access to primary education, secondary education, and university is much lower than men. And therefore, there is a cumulative educational deficit, right, that is higher for women than it is for men. And that has also consequences in terms of when they are accessing digital skills training, right? So they don't have like the education that they need to go into like a higher, to gain higher skills. And therefore, because the digital labor market is very competitive, they are often stuck with basic jobs. And we're not going to be able to talk about AI, but there has been a shift in terms of the introduction of AI. So before, let's say 3 or 4 years ago, they could find basic jobs on those digital platforms. But now with the introduction of AI, they've been losing those opportunities online. Another gender bias, it's the lack of access to connectivity and what we call small-scale digital infrastructure. So it's referring to laptops, but also smartphones. So there are a number of studies that are showing that compared to refugee men, refugees have less access to laptops, but also sometimes smartphones that they have to share within the family. Another bias is in terms of, and maybe that's the bigger one, it's in terms of the expected gender social roles in their respective community, but also within Kenya. So it's very hard for a lot of women to make the case within their own community that you have a job within the economy is actually a good job. So there are a lot of, it's not like it's not worthy for refugee women to go into that space, and when they should be doing other types of jobs, such as trading, for instance, in the local market. And then the last one is about the gender bias within the digital economy itself. So when we talk with a lot of refugee men like Daniel, they were all saying that the digital economy or the digital labor platforms were actually neutral, gender neutral. But from the perspective of a lot of refugee women, they were actually saying that this was not the case, that in fact, the way the digital economy is being structured is an obstacle for women. And it's also because when in different platforms, when they have to bet for a job, sometimes there are interviews that are taking place. And if they are a woman, it's more disadvantaged than an asset. But it's also because a lot of jobs that are online at the level of the global economy are taking place during the night. So when you are in Nairobi, and you want to have a job online, a lot of them would be having those jobs during the night. And if you are a refugee woman, it would be harder to make the case within your own family that you want to connect during the night. So these are what we call all those gender biases is constituting this digital gender gap, and it's clearly evident in the case of refugee women in Kenya. But I would say, because these are quite obviously obstacles, there are also a lot of ways for refugee women to kind of overcome also those barriers. And in the study that we've been doing, we've been also looking at the different types of jobs that they are doing, and which might not be like the gig economy or the having access to digital labor platforms. So a lot of them would actually use social media platforms to do business. Like if they are selling clothes, for instance, they will use those social media platforms and have customers or clients that are located into the local economy. So there are also much more connection between the digital economy and the local economy that the refugee women are exploring.
Thanks. What strikes me is different contexts, Afghanistan, Kenya, Jordan, similar challenges, and certainly for women. So I know, Jonathan, you work with Afghan women. We'd like to hear the challenges, and hearing the challenges that you heard from Marie, I'd like to, just for you to talk about some of the challenges that the women you face, that you work with face specifically. And I know you mentioned a few, but just to give us some more, some more broader, challenges, especially in the context of what you heard so far from the rest of the panel.
Yes, I guess I touched on some of the challenges with regards to being able to connect and access to technology. I think also just building what Marie said, there's definitely a divide in terms of access based on gender. So I think within some of the families, although the families are generally very supportive of the women in the family accessing the programme, I think the men definitely have priority. And also there have been a few incidents where the students have felt pressured from the family to get married, and that's big. I think that's because they see adult women around the house being as kind of a drain on their house resources, and they think only you need to get married and make your own house. So I think these sort of cultural ideas about when it's appropriate to engage with education and employment shapes this kind of access they have to whatever program you've got on offer. I think also, obviously, the fact that they're so constrained to their house, their lives have really shrunk to the home. And I think that's how the Taliban government role of women in society. It's like, stay in your house, be quiet. When you step out, you've got to be covered. Women have been made invisible in Afghanistan. And I think that sort of, unfortunately, although that's a challenge for them, it's also like an opportunity presented by connecting digitally. You're building a kind of digital world that they're connecting to that becomes, I think Marissa will touch on this in her talk tomorrow, becomes a site of resistance, a site where they can kind of reclaim some of what they had, the freedoms that they were gaining before the Taliban took over, and they're kind of building that life in the digital world. And that access to education and employment through that way is a way for them to kind of rebuild a sense of themselves. And I think it also provides an opportunity to link people in different places. If they're stuck in their home, they can generally only speak with close family members. The digital world allows them to connect with people who are displaced in lots of different places. And we've tried to exploit that, for example, using WhatsApp to set up little conversation groups. I try to set tasks. So I say, in your conversation group this week, you're going to discuss this topic. And the way we've got it set up on WhatsApp, we can see that they're having the conversations. And they've also reported to us that they have sort of spontaneously set up their own groups on WhatsApp to talk to each other, share their struggles, or maybe just share simple things like recipes or just what they've been doing during the day.
Yeah, thank you. Really fascinating. I want to open it up to the audience. You had a question, yes?
Yeah, thank you very much, all of you. And I think it's very relevant and important issue. Let me just try to provoke some challenges for the narrative that the digital sphere will be very productive and inclusive for refugees. I remember when the technology the innovation and technology strategy to reduce poverty, if you remember this, like 25, 30 years ago. And we have a lot of studies, research, and policies that said, okay, this technology, the internet, the mobile phone will reduce poverty, will increase equality, etc. I just want to raise my concern that this digital sphere is designed and invested outside of the control of refugees and even informal workers. So we are not controlling the servers, we are not controlling the big companies who are changing the market for one day. So many skills will be disappeared toward other skills. So this is one concern of me, that it could be another phase of inequalities. The second point is the informality. That yes, it is an accessible, especially this is the end, let's say, the end chain of establishing your business, but also it could be an abuse of our effort and our work with less wages, and might be without any protection, without any insurance for our life, for our work. We might leave the school to invest our skills in coding, and then this will disappear without any kind of guarantee of decent work and sustainability. So just I shared last point. Our research with adolescents, like we have a research with 700 adolescents, and the girls and boys complain about the digital work and the digital platforms, that there is a lot of inequalities in accessing to it because of poverty, lack of infrastructure, as you mentioned, but also because of insecurity and digital insecurity, and a lot of bullying, a lot of risking the personal informations.
I can.
Okay, Sofiane,
Wow.
thank you.
It's a very broad philosophical, I think. To answer your first concern, I think it's not about only refugees. The problem is everywhere. Is even white collar people could lose their job with all these new advanced platform that is coming every day. And I think refugee will be hurt like others, unfortunately. And it's not only the tech industry itself is unfortunately not very inclusive in a certain way, but in the same time, I can give some example like Daniel in some of my cohorts. I have still student in Zatari camp working for a US startup with a reasonable good freelancing salary. It's not a security-based approach, true, but now for the last 5 years, they're working for the same company. Then it means that also it's like being graduated from something. You have the right soft skills, the curiosity, you can be a talented guy sitting in camp or working in a company in person. But I think it's a question about the freedom of access to this, not online, but curriculum in general. And I think the tech have probably a lot of drawback you mentioned, but have good quality that there is some freedom on accessing this content. And if you connect to this content with the right soft skills, you can promote your own job. And I heard Daniel, he said that I'm feeling entrepreneur of my own time. And this could be one of the steps of the freedom from a refugee, let's say, status to potentially a citizen status. And yeah, I mean, that's my answer for you.
Anyone else want to address? Yeah, Amy?
Yeah, I would say that firstly, I massively agree that these are really, really tough challenges working in the digital space. I would say, though, that they're a reason for humanitarians to do more in digital rather than to turn away from it. I mean, beyond bullying, you also have misinformation, disinformation, things that actually are starting and exacerbating conflicts. How do you move away from that? Well, you need to make sure that populations are aware of how information circulates on digital channels and to separate fact from fiction. AI, yes, absolutely is going to mean that a lot of people's jobs may be replaced, but also what kind of human experience are these AI data models being trained on? And if we don't focus on increasing connectivity, on increasing refugee inclusion in digital spaces, then the digital divide that's going to leave behind in the next millennia is only going to widen. So yeah, I think I hear those criticisms a lot, and I'm so glad that, you know, after digital's been on the horizon for quite some time now, but UNHCR and other agencies are just now releasing digital strategies, looping digital into the new set of SDGs and all of these things. So yeah, stop there.
Larry?
Yeah, I think I was also going to say that when you talk about access for refugees to the digital economy, you also have to think in terms of rights, of refugee rights, right? So I think it's great to think about how they can find those jobs or to match them with employers. But I think in the case of Kenya, but in every places, it's all about refugee rights in the first place, right? So if they don't have access to the labor market, either in the local and national economy or in the digital economy, then that will lead to discrimination and exploitation. So there is not so much difference in between the two spaces. So I guess for people who are advocating for refugee rights, it's about promoting this access to the labor market, and then that will mean that then they have access to social protection, that they can have access to join a trade union, and then that the rights will be respected, right? So in a way, the digital space is not the solution if refugees rights labor rights.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think you make a good point. The issue isn't rights in the digital economy, it's rights in general. So I think we have to really remember that. Alexander, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I could agree about unstable digital world, but we could notice how unstable real world now. My question is, or maybe invitation, tomorrow I will present sad and funny University in Exile story. I'm looking for partnership to create University in Exile virtual museum. Maybe some of you or some of your ideas would be helpful. Let's discuss this tomorrow. And we could see where real life or virtual life will win.
Yeah, good point. I'm really happy to discuss it, and I have a solution for you. Yeah? Okay, we'll come to you and then after.
Yeah, so thank you. I think also just like I will start with some challenges that I faced before. As a refugee myself, and at a certain point I was about this, like in this stage. So for example, there is the legalization for the refugees, although that sometimes the digital opportunity, helping them to access some opportunity. But in Turkey, for example, they face a problem in receiving their payments for their work. And there were no regulation helping them to take their payment. Many I know several cases who received, let's say, first payment, second payment, and then their bank account closed if they have, or they don't have bank account as mentioned. So this is one issue. I think it still need like more advocacy with the local government where hosting the refugees. The other point is also from several projects I've seen before that yes, like there is no official contract like the regular employment that save the rights of the refugees in their work. The other point, I think also a lot of the investment in the digital work go toward coding, which is good. And yes, there is a huge market need. However, now if you look into the digital sphere, there is a lot of digital services, which also could have like a lot of opportunity for the refugees to contribute. And I think this is what we need to invest more first on localization for the investment for the digital economy based on the like refugee situation and like the context. And just like as a quick example, so I'm co-founder for a refugee-led organization, and when we do our project, we find, because we used to work in education, and we find that there's decline in the for job opportunity for educators in Syria because of the decline of the funding. So we find this opportunity, we recruit teachers to teach online. So it's digital opportunity using their skills. We didn't give them totally new skills. We just like build up on their existing skills with just like how to deal with digital and like teach online. And it was faster, and it was the most important link to work opportunity. It was not only training. So they go in a pathway that gives some sustainability for the future, that they are not only trained but also linked. So I think this type of project need to be like thought more, and it could be in several other domains. And the last point is about like the linkages with the private sector, especially with the international company or NGOs. I saw several NGOs try to work before on the digital economy, but they themselves, they are not recruiting refugees, although sometimes they have the same type of employment criteria or like the need, but they are not. So I think this is also another point, is just like to work more on the advocacy with the NGOs themselves or with the big companies. Here, there is a lot of companies in the UK that are recruiting in other countries because they want like where they have lower wage. And this is okay. It could be, instead of going just like in this, like link it to the to solve also the refugee problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
Well, I can just suggest something about this lower wages subject, and we are really in a competitive market here, and the idea is not to. I think it's to maximize in this competition the wages that the refugee can have, and not only in a charity mode, in a talented mode, because not he is refugee, but because he is a good coder. And that's part of I think the coding that we can, the curriculum that we can promote to refugees to amplify or to maximize his capability in freelancing platform or in, in-person or remote job, to work with a reasonable good salary, because not he's refugee, but because he's a good talent. And that's this context of shifting the mindset is important, I think, and that's what we are trying to promote to our students. Is there is Ukrainian, there is Indian that have low wages and they work a lot and succeeding, and you are in the competition with them. It's not because you are a refugee, there is something quite different for you.
No,
I don't know if I answered to your.
Yeah, sorry. Just like just to put it right, I don't mean like lower wage in a bad way. I mean because of the local cost, like the cost of the country, different from one to another. So they are doing this anyway. So it's just like to make the linkages.
Yeah.
Because they are qualified, not because they are.
Because they are qualified.
Because they are qualified, but this linkages is not happen.
True.
Yeah.
I want to go to Daniel. Daniel, you got some comments?
Yeah, I wanted to respond to one of his comments about how there are no contracts that protects the rights and the work of refugees or displaced persons. It's true that much of the digital gig economy is under-regulated, and so in most cases you fall victim to exploitation, and by being exploited, you don't. The systems are not well developed to give you a safety net or support if you are underpaid or mistreated in such cases, and so you take it upon yourself to treat your work as a business, and by doing that, you come up with your own documentations. Like in my case, before I start working on a project, I must first of all generate an agreement that must be signed by my client and by myself. And I also have invoices. And by doing that, you have documentation about the work that you're doing. And also your finances are well organized, so that the clients or your potential employers see you as a serious person and may think twice before trying to exploit you or use you in an unsafe way, or even try to use your data or your personal data in in a manner that might endanger your safety. And so for now, the systems are not well developed, and so it becomes a personal responsibility of the freelancers or those who work in the digital economy to protect themselves by taking measures into their own hands.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. I like the focus on refugees taking agency. I'll respond quickly to the question about financial inclusion. There are lots of systems beyond governments that allow financial inclusion. There are lots of fintech solutions to support refugees that seem to work beyond host government regulation. I want to go to that one question there. Yes. One more question and then we'll finish. Yes.
I'm from Kakuma. And this experience is really inspiring. Thank you so much. But I have worries. I may respond to that. As you know, camp students, they start learning computer when they finish secondary school. That creates a gap. And you said that digital market based on competency, mastery is a requirement. So how can they be competitive with that limitations? So if there is a plan that UNHCR to bring the computer, of course, the camps.
Basic skills to high schools, you say? Yeah.
The other one, I want to pick up the issue of localization. Yeah, I think there is opportunity to create local solutions for local problems within Kakuma context. Am I right, Prof. Daniel? Probably correct. Actually, that is the most feasible one. We have a lot of problems. Can we bring some either the digital one or IT solutions so that we start from there and build our capacity?
If I get you right, you're talking about how we can transfer transfer the effort to doing training within people in the camps. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
The digital skill to solve the local problems.
Okay, great. Anyone wants to have a quick go? Oh, Daniel, you had a comment? Yes.
Yes, I wanted to respond to that directly because it's my lived experience because I'm from Kakuma. And so it's true that most of the students in Kakuma start learning basic computing after high school. And so a couple of years ago, like 10 years ago, Vodafone came up with a program by setting up digital classrooms in various schools in the camp. And so it gave access to internet and devices to access online platforms. And so by that, they've reduced the number of people who start learning basic computing knowledge after high school. A very good example is myself. My first lesson in computing was in my first class at the university. I didn't know, I hadn't gone to school to study computing, both in high school and primary school. I hadn't interacted with computers since then, but I had an opportunity to learn it in the university. And so access to these resources such as internet and electronic devices like smartphones or even tablets have given refugees and displaced persons an opportunity to start their digital journey at an early age.
Thanks, Daniel. I think we have to end now, but I want to say thank you all. And I think it was great to hear from Daniel just what the potential is. And I think we can see that with the right support, with the right investment in infrastructure, we can have many people like Daniel whose lives can thrive if we do this right. So it's up to all of us to make sure that things are done so we don't have, protracted crisis will continue, but how can we make the most so lives won't be lost? So thank you to my panelists. Thank you to Daniel for zooming in from Nairobi, and thank you all for being here.